Hey everybody, I'm Lon Stroschein, former public company executive turned lifestyle engineer. In 2022, I walked away from my job as a public company executive. I left without a safety net, without another job, without a backlog of clients, or without a resume. But I left anyway. I left because I knew the best days of my life were right in front of me, and they weren't going to be lived where I was standing. Since then, I've launched a best-selling book, coached thousands of elite performers around the world, hosted a top-rated podcast, moved my family across the country, and created a movement that has inspired the change in 1,000 lives. Look, if you're here, it's not an accident or an algorithm. It's you. If you've reached the top of your game and you feel stuck, if you'd trade what you have but don't know what you'd trade it for, then buckle up. This podcast is for you. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. I'm going to see all of you along the Normal 40 Highway. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Normal 40, the podcast. My name is Lon Stroschein. I am the founder of the Normal 40, and I am super excited to be here with you today. Look, I have the honor, the distinct honor, the incredible honor of sharing with you my friend, Dr. Parker Hayes. Now, Dr. Hayes is, well, you're going to hear about it. I'm not going to go on too long because you're going to hear about it through this podcast. But Parker is a dude who found me through a previous podcast I did with Dr. Pochek, through a client of mine, Dr. Willis, through a client of mine, Dr. O'Malley, and we found each other, and we talked about 4 months ago, and we realized, look, we got a lot in common. He was a few months before he was going to make a trade, but he had already decided. He had tied it out. He'd use a lot of the podcasts, a lot of the things we work on here, and he decided to make the trade. And we just talked now the first week in August of 24, 2 months after his trade. And we went deep on a whole bunch of things. And I learned a ton. I mean, one of my first questions is, tell me what you were doing in sixth grade. I had no idea that it was the year his dad was diagnosed with a life-altering illness, and it changed the course of his life. So look, he leaves you with all sorts of incredible nuggets, incredible things that you can use, you can work through, and you get to hear what he is building through his new job, through his new life, through the new things that he's working on, lasting impact wellness. And I can't wait to see where he takes this world in the days ahead. So everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the Normal 40 Highway. Thanks for sharing your journey with me. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, I hope you know this is where you can find me. Lon@normal40.com finds me. I've got a closed private group called The Insider. It will be the best $25 you ever spend on yourself. And if you're really ready, join Vintage One. You're going to have to join the wait list for the next vintage. I'm sold out, but that's where we go to really do the hard work of changing lives. And it's incredible. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to see all of you on the podcast. All right. Well, look, dude, there's no guarantee that what we're talking about right here isn't part of the podcast. Just so you know, that's kind of how I roll with mine. We just show up and shine.
I'm unafraid. Most of my business in life has been showing up, and your first impressions at the door of the patient's room or in the client's interaction. So, hey, if the little red light isn't on, life still goes on.
You got it. Well, every time it's like this morning, of course, you're on my calendar. I see Parker Hayes, and I can't say your name without, first of all, saying both your first and last name. And second of all, I have this voice in the back of my head saying, and now batting the third baseman, number 7, Parker Hayes. It's just this perfect baseball name. I told you that the first time we rambled, and I still believe it.
Well, that'd be wonderful, especially if I were the catcher for the Chicago Cubs. I would sign up to be on that radio broadcast any day.
All right, man. Well, look, we got so many things to cover. So just to kind of review for you and I's sake, we met virtually after, I believe it was right after the podcast I did with Keith Pochek, who's a dude. If we're not careful, we could spend the next 15 minutes talking about how much we like that guy and how cool he is. And we can do that, but I think that's how we first connected. And then you pieced together, well, then Jeff Willis, who's a client of mine, Dr. Willis was a client of mine. He worked for you, around you, went to school together. You're gonna have to connect those bases. And then you turned me on to Dr. Patrick O'Malley, and Dr. O'Malley and I are now working on a few things together. So it's been super cool ever since I've met you to have all these cool intersections and just see where they take us.
Yeah, well, when you mention those three names, that convenes a lot of meetings of the Mutual Admiration Society. And Patrick, in many ways, is the grand networker. He has a superpower that is called networking, and I've been the beneficiary. I mean, we really have been able to reconnect with old friends, make new ones, and we're all the better for it.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely fantastic. So the last time we talked, you were still in the earliest stages of a trade. The people. So I don't need to remind you, the people who show up here. You're here because you at some point recently were going through your next trade in your life, and you've had a few up to this point, and you are more recently going through one, and so is your wife, by the way, going through a trade. And I'd love to know, just give me a few bars on where you're at now. And then just so you know, I'm going to go all the way back. I'm going to go back to where you grew up, and we're going to rebuild from today, go back and come back to today.
Sure. Yes. The current status.
Look, I'm a little worried. You waited too long there. You're not down with this. You're not down with this prescription. What are you worried about here? Here's what I want to know.
No, it's just, it's not always easy to talk about oneself, especially in depth. I'm sure that many of your rambles, despite your disarming charm, people have found trepidation in the early sentences, even if they then bare their soul subsequently. And I'm used to interviewing others and talking about their problems and journeys and victories, to be faced with a rubric like, hey man, tell me exactly where you are now. By the way, we're going all the way back. Okay, I'm in, but it's daunting. Sure. My current status, I have been practicing emergency medicine for 33 years and in a variety of settings. And I guess we're going to go back and cover some of those. But I left the clinical practice of emergency medicine just within the last 2 months. I made it 33 years to the day and was able to walk out of the hospital and have not walked back into an emergency department under any capacity since. So since then, I have traded into this new role of coach, consultant, speaker, podcaster, upcoming TED speaker, TEDx speaker, and someone who is focusing with my clients or patients on prevention, well-being, other aspects that aren't necessarily traditionally part of emergency medicine and acute care that has made up such a focus for me in the majority of my career. So that's the current status. I am extremely excited about it. I've had wonderful times. Some people call it a retirement. I would say it's much more like a career change and a transition and a trade. Not to mention the fact that even if I've retired, my children have not, and life has gone on much as it was before when I was on a regular schedule of emergency shifts and still attempting to develop and cultivate these new roles at the same time.
All right, man. 33 years. Well, that's a whole bunch of things. It's freaking spectacular. It's admirable. It's incredible, not a lot of people do a single profession for 33 years, and certainly not one as demanding from day one, from residency, well, from med school, from taking the test to get into med school all the way through the 33rd anniversary of your time as a doctor. It is a daunting, hard, arduous, incredibly rewarding and demanding path. 33 years. So look, so let's go back. Let's go back to before you wanted to be a doctor. Tell me what was going on in your world in sixth grade. Where were you at?
Illinois, a university town. And in many ways, my world was awash with opportunities. I was not a gilded silver spooner exactly, but I had highly educated, really on the ball parents and was living next to a major university. So there were a lot of opportunities that came my way, musically, intellectually, geographically, culturally. My peers, looking back on them now, are superstars in so many ways. My sisters are stratospheric in their accomplishments and abilities, but a lot of that was because of the milieu created by my parents and by growing up in that town. But everything, as I say, was going swimmingly. It's funny you should bring up the number 12, my age, because that's when my father was diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis. And it took a tremendous toll on him, his career, his practice, and I watched his health steadily decline over the ensuing years. And that was in part also paralleled by some chronic illness developments in my mother. My two older sisters had left the house by then, grown up and gone off to their paths. So I got put into a place where if it was broken or needed to be fixed in the house, then that would fall to me. If my mom needed me to do all the grocery shopping or the laundry or something else, not that she in any way was incapable or lazy, but she was ready due to some of her illnesses to delegate that responsibility, then I was having to step up and do those things. And I found myself in roles that I wasn't real happy about. It wasn't easy when in my Galileo version of the universe, I'm at the center and now I'm not. I need to help some of these celestial bodies rotate. But I sure learned a lot. I got used to trying to fix stuff. I got used to, I want to fix it now. I want to fix things right now. I want to see the results of my work in a very tangible and immediate way. I revered, again, my father and mother, but they were both medical in many ways. My mother was an OR scrub nurse at Cook County Hospital in Chicago originally, and my father was a physician. And I was led to medicine, I think, because of those things. I dabbled in other things. I started as a political science major. I wanted to be a marine biologist at different times and had fantastic experiences that way, even in a landlocked university. As an undergrad, I got to be next to huge gray whales, et cetera, during different internships and research trips. But the thing that really compelled me was people. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to do something service oriented for others, but at a professional level of training. Medicine where I could fix stuff in a hurry seemed to be the way to go. Honestly, watching the toll that rheumatoid arthritis took on my father's physical form made me want to shy away from things that would be completely dependent on certain parts of my body, like surgery or orthopedics. Even though I really like those things, I wanted to use the full breadth of my intellect as my primary surgical tool. So emergency medicine is what came my way. And I started working as a medic in college, so I had some exposure. But later, when I walked into a big ER for the first time with some short white coat on and some semblance of responsibility, I like staying up late. I like seeing these crazy things. I like seeing it all, and I want to try to fix it. Well, you can't, but I didn't know that at the time. And those were the things that transpired probably right around age 12 on that led me to the House of Medicine.
That's pretty crazy that that's just kind of the age I picked and that's what was going on in your world. But do you think that your desire to be an emergency medical physician started then?
No, because it didn't really exist as an entity for me then, as much as caregiver did.
Okay. Where
I
were
think
you?
emergency is something that came later.
Sure, makes perfect sense. And where you mentioned you had sisters. How many siblings did you have?
Two older sisters.
All right, so you were the baby and you were at home. All right. Well,
That's right. That's right.
that's a that's a lot for a 12-year-old budding third baseman or catcher for the Chicago Cubs.
Well, in the baseball world, my father went from uh, striking me out in the backyard with a wiffle ball on a very regular basis to within weeks he couldn't pitch to me, and it was quite a transition.
So let's fast forward through high school. Do you remember? So you said it wasn't at 12. Do you remember when it dawned on you that, hey, you know what? Maybe being a physician is something I want to pursue. Do you remember that moment? You're like, God, there's something about this that captivates me. Do you remember what was going on?
I actually do. I'm always skeptical of these stories, and a brief sidebar, I'll tell you why. Because in my career as a residency director, I read personal statements of would-be residents to my emergency program. I read thousands of them. And so often they, and pardon my tone, but they smacked of melodrama and grand cloud opening beams of light and Greek choruses and who knows what. Oh, I remember the moment. But I actually do sort of remember the moment.
All right,
I,
take it there.
I, I'd always entertained the notion because, I had some medical modeling in my family, although my sisters didn't follow that path at all. But I mentioned I was interested in marine biology. So I had done an internship out in California. I had been on this research vessel and had gone out to Santa Cruz Island and collected samples and worked with a really kind of cool but prominent Sierra Club scientist and with Hub SeaWorld Research out there. And I had, man, this was so cool. And wow, this is awesome. Well, fast forward about a month and it's wintertime and it's Indiana and I'm in college and I'm a greenhorn EMT working on an ambulance crew. So again, sunny research vessel, Southern California, gray whales, a mother and her calf, gray whale. I'm underwater swimming next to them. Now all of a sudden I'm working an overturned VW Beetle in a ditch in the pouring rain in Indiana. This particular VW was sort of packed with teenagers. There were, I don't know what the seating capacity of a 75 Beetle is. Actually, I should know since I had a 72 once, but it was more than that by one or two. They were packed in and they overturned. But my particular patient, there was a girl with a broken collarbone, probably in retrospect, but seemed to be in a lot of pain and shook up. And she was terrified. I'm a kid. I mean, I'm 19 or 20 years old, but I said to her, it's going to be okay. You're breathing. She said, what about my parents? Are they going to find out? I said, probably, but it's okay. You're okay. And that's all your parents are going to care about. And it kind of worked. She was chill and she was more comfortable and she calmed down. And I thought later, I don't know what just happened, but wow, people are so much cooler than whales. And I'm standing then in some two-bit hospital in central Indiana after delivering these patients to the emergency department. And I thought, yeah, I think I need to rethink this. I love the science, I love the biology, but it's packaged up in a person, and that is so much more interesting. And I think that's when I really made the transition.
Okay. So you go from that moment, and I'm going to over um, dramatize this, and I don't mean to. I'm just trying to move through the story. And you kind of decide there that we need to shift the path around, and you decide to go into medicine and then emergency medicine. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Normal 40 the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that one of the questions I get asked all the time is, okay, what's next? I'm here, I'm listening. Your content is good, the podcasts are great, but what can I really do? And I tell people, I've created a community for you. And I don't advertise it very much, but I'm going to advertise it here. The community is called The Insider. If you go to my website, normal40.com, click on communities, The Insider is $25 a month, and you can cancel after the first month or after the first year or after the first decade. It's a month to month conversation. And every day I'm in there and we're communicating in a forum. And every other Thursday, we have office hours where I'm in there and the whole community shows up and we support one another through their journey. I want you to check it out. If you use code Insider Access, the first month is on me. Go to normal40.com, check out The Insider, and I'm going to see all of you on the inside. All right. I'll get you back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I'll see all of you on the next page. Tell me about your earliest days in medicine and what you just loved about it. Two things: what it did for you, that gets to be a thing, and what it did for others.
Sure. Honestly, so many things in both those categories that it's difficult to list. I'm trying to answer your question more on the forefront. What was it doing in those early days, as opposed to what do I realize now was actually transpiring? In those days, I didn't have the discipline or maturity necessarily to really blaze my own path, either intellectually or from a career standpoint. And medicine is an interesting assembly line conveyor belt once you get on it. You go down from college and you apply to this stage, to medical school, to residency, and they bolt stuff onto you down this assembly line. They know, what's coming. This is the part where you weld on this thing, and you get this assembly going, but you don't necessarily have to design the whole thing yourself, like a lot of people do in their careers. Medicine has a structure and you go down it. So it helped me to be a part of that institutionalized medicine training programs, looking back, because it overcame some of the dearths in my own maturity and foresight. But it still got me to a higher place of training and put me in a position to be a servant in the ways that I did know that I wanted to do. What was I doing for others? Probably precious little, many times, but what I was definitely trying to do in those days was listen. My father had taught me more than anything else about being an active listener. And it caused him to work countless hours into the night, much later than his peers. But I would hear from his patients later, well, your dad would listen to me, and I would talk to him. And I waited in his waiting room forever, but I didn't care. The patients would really say that. And it started to dawn on me later that that was a critical skill that everybody could possess, even if they didn't have all the medical knowledge yet that they needed. So what I was doing early on, I think, was listening, learning empathetic skills. The other thing that it did for me, and just to jump ahead, was it showed me the world. Emergency medicine is, I like to say, the great equalizer. It doesn't really matter who you are. Nothing is sure but death and taxes. Oh, yeah? And going to the ER. Everybody's going to the ER someday, some way, either with their friend or their patient or on an ambulance or something, with few exceptions. And there's enormous parity gained once you enter those glass doors. Rich, poor, black, white, entitled or disenfranchised, whether you speak the language or not. it shows up in the ER, and the entire strata of socioeconomic and cultural society came to me on a regular basis. And wow, I just learned like crazy. You had to. It was all right there. And if what you were working on was empathy and listening, and you had a palette as rich culturally as what shows up in the ER, it was an enormously rich time and a great place to learn.
When we talked 4 months ago, I remember we talked about an hour, and we were 40. I think it's an hour and 15 minutes. We were 45 minutes into that conversation when you dropped this little nugget in passing about you being a front man for a band for like 19 years or something. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, dog. We gotta go back and undo some of that. So somewhere between the time when you were giving care to your parents and you were entering the ER for the first time, you were the front man for a band. And I got to know, how did that come to be? What happened there?
Well, the front man for a band actually was well into adulthood when I was already a physician. The musical training and the musical life had begun right around the time that you bring up. But I would jump to one of my favorite things to say, which is so obvious that it's practically insipid. It's all connected. All this stuff is connected. And in fact, when you improve one thing or you develop one part of yourself, you almost always reap dividends in other parts of yourself. So I mentioned how much opportunity I had. I was a preschool student and sang a few bars, evidently, and a professor at the university told my mom, "Hey, that kid can sing. You should probably let him do that." And so I did. I did a lot, and I sang uh, with the Illinois Opera Theater when I was a boy, before this strange thing happened to my voice at age 11. And I got used to performing on stages, later on a football field or what have you. Then it didn't seem to me so foreign to walk out in front of large amounts of people and do something. Well, I wasn't going to make a career as an opera singer and certainly not as a football player. But years later, when I walked out to a large lecture hall or presented to groups of physicians or spoke in different locales, that was something I didn't have to learn from the get-go because of those early experiences. But another thing that came my way, more to your point about adulthood fronting a band, was there were so many lessons therein, but basically from the late 90s on for almost 20 years, 19 years, then I played in a band with some of my peers, and we played mostly around the Charlotte area, but some in other locations through the Southeast. Well, I learned some things on stage, and one of the biggest ones is it ain't about you, dude. It's about what everybody here is doing together. It's about the band, how we work together as a team. It's about the energy that you begin to share. And I would envision almost this ellipse in front of me, where in this ellipse, then this person over here, this is the only Saturday night they get this week. In fact, it might be the only one they get this month and or this year, but they're going to have a great time at this show, and I'm going to make sure of it. And we're going to share that energy together. And I started to realize much more about how much shared energy mattered in terms of what your pursuits are, what you're trying to do with yourself. It's much less about you than it is about sharing in a participatory way with others. I learned that if you know the first line and how to close it, you're probably going to be okay if you if you practiced enough in the middle. But if you don't know the first line, you're really out of luck. Um, and so, proper preparation prevents poor performance. I knew the first line a lot, or I knew somebody who did, and that would be my guitarist, who's actually also was an emergency physician and underwent a trade about 5 years ago himself. But when I didn't know, I knew where to go, and he would always know. But the third thing, amongst many, that I would say I really learned from being in a band for a long time was they don't really care about the rest of you. If you think you're a big shot professor or a doctor and you write orders and you do all this by day, and then later that day you show up at some club and kind of a punk 22-year-old club owner has never heard of my band, and I'm like, hey man, can we please come here and play a gig? And he looks at me like, no, dude, whatever, leave a demo, hit the road, I don't have time for you. And it's a humble pie that I think everybody needs to have. Is you're only as good as your last gig, you're only as good as the last thing that you did in that recipient's eyes. And you need to keep earning your spot. As long as it's true to what you think you should be doing, you're going to have to earn it day by day, gig by gig. Your reputation will not always precede you. In fact, your reputation may not even matter anymore. It's just a matter of stepping up there and doing the thing that you love and making sure you do a good job of it every time, and the rest will follow.
Okay. That is fantastic, dude. Love it. Let's go through. I'm hitting the fast forward button here again, just in the interest of time. Gone through this experience with your parents. You've become a doctor. You've augmented some of your passions through your art, which is music, and that's fantastic. But at some point in your journey, after a few decades of time in your profession, probably when you were at the height of your professional career, when your title was the biggest, your paycheck was as big as it's ever been, you've gone through some shit, because life will do that. You arrive at this place where you know you could stay and you think you could go. And you had to reconcile that somehow. Do you remember with any level of clarity what was going on when it dawned on you that maybe your work here was done?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. And I think knowing you and knowing what you've done for so many people and knowing the conversations we've had before have furthered um, this congelation of ideas in my mind. Yeah, looking back, I, I guess it did dawn on me that you could stay. I mean, I had it most, I had, I don't know how much longer, but I'd like to think, and people would tell me, I mean, I guess this makes me sound really like a jerk, but I won an award last year as the outstanding emergency doc. So it wasn't like, ooh, man, that dude's washed up. He needs to go. And he's the only one who doesn't know that. It was, I felt like, I got a lot more in the tank. I could do this, but it's time to do something else. It's time to listen to other voices inside of me that say, there are other ways to accomplish the service that you have always sought. And a treasured colleague of mine, Steve Colucciello, told me once that, healthy plants need to be repotted. And I kind of clung to that and thought, it's time to do something else when I've still got so much left in the tank. I've got a lot of growing to do. I've got a lot of other things to accomplish. And I could go into the sunset, work a few more years and call it a retirement and then really not do anything. Or I could change careers now and change focus now and see if I couldn't find a rejuvenation, find a clarity on my path that could really help other people. So when was that? Honestly, I had the goal to make it to 33 years for a very particular reason. I know I keep talking about this, and this is definitely the deepest psychoanalysis I've ever undergone in my life. Thanks, Lon. But my dad worked 33 years to the day. Uh, and then he died 3 weeks later. And I always thought to myself, I want to make it at least 33 years. And then I want to live the second half of my life for both of us, to do all the things that he wasn't ever able to do. But besides that timestamp, I had an epiphany moment that I've described before under other circumstances. But my wife and I had talked about some of these things, making a trade, doing different things. And we were seated at an outdoor cafe here in Charlotte with our laptops and, our strategy. But an ambulance went screaming by, and certainly enough to interrupt conversation for the entirety of the cafe. And I watched it go by with that classic Doppler sound of increasing and then fading. And I thought to myself, I've spent at that time 30 years learning and then knowing what to do with anything that comes off that ambulance. But now I really need to spend the remaining time helping people from ever having to get on it in the first place. And so I felt like that was a real moment for me that it's okay. It's all connected. It's part of the same longitudinal view of patients that you thought you could have in emergency medicine, but perhaps we're limited by the construct of it. And we'll do something different. We'll focus on a different aspect of people's health and well-being now. And perhaps the perspectives gained from what seemed like a lifetime in acute and emergency care will really inform those lessons that you hope to impart in the preventative and well-being realm.
So after you had that moment, and thanks for describing it so vividly, I think we can all understand exactly what you were doing. We can all picture the type of setting you were in, and we can all certainly hear what was going on around you. And then at the same time, we've got three of the sentences. We can probably then feel internally what it is you're wrestling with. Because after dedicating, and this isn't about you, this is about people, this is about human beings. When you dedicate such an incredible amount of time to something, to one thing, to one profession, to one company, to one industry, and I don't mean that negative, you decided to limit it to something. That after a while, the decision you made when you were, that seed was planted for you in 12th grade, when you were 12, and then became a little bit more real when you're in high school, and then certainly became real in college. And this decision you made when you were a different human being that propelled you through decades of being an award-winning, high-achieving emergency medicine physician. You arrive at this place, and the same is true for an accountant. The same is true for an attorney. The same is true for a business executive. The same is true for a business owner. Anybody who's a career military, they've dedicated their life to one thing. And you get to this place where you're literally at the top of your game. You've got everything you set out to get. Every award on the wall, every accolade in your scrapbook, everyone around you thinks you've got the world just absolutely under control. And you arrive in your example to a coffee shop table where the ambulance went by and it sounded different. Mine was similar. I was with my wife as well. I was in a nondescript bar after a concert. You talk about the electricity, you talk about the energy, it resonates. It's real. It's real. That is a real energy. And I had it. And it was in that moment with my wife that it dawned on me that maybe my work here is done. And if I just permit myself to doing something else, I'll be fine. And it's in those moments that this release happens. I'm curious for you. Do you remember, I'm not assuming it was the next hour or day or week or month, but that release triggered something. What was the first thing that you accepted that maybe you weren't going to make it to 40 years in the ER, what was kind of the first thing you started to explore? Well, if it isn't me in the ER, but it's me in medicine in another way. What was the first thing you allowed yourself to explore?
I know that's what you do, Lon, but that's brilliantly described and framed in your question. Um, I think the first thing it allowed me to do was shift to student mode. I get to be a student again. Hey, lifelong learner, when's the last time you really got into it? Got into, you know, read books cover to cover, go to conferences, take a bunch of notes, learn. By no means does anyone ever really master the body of knowledge for emergency medicine or any other, major career like that. It's called an art because you keep practicing. Well, but on the other hand, I kind of got the t-shirts, man. Like I've been doing this forever. I know people would come ask me questions and I would just sort of know the answer from time to time. And again, that makes me uncomfortable to say, but it's descriptive. But I wasn't feeling like I was in a growth phase. I wasn't making myself a lot better. I'm not, but shifting to another focus allows you to take self inventory. What are my shortcomings now? What don't I know? How could I put myself out? How could I fight imposter syndrome? How can I say that I am an expert about this new thing, whatever that may be, if I don't dedicate what they showed me as the way to learn a large body of knowledge in the past to this thing? And I think it was really fun to go back to school. I started knocking out a bunch of books and going to conferences and learning about aging and longevity, learning more about well-being, listening to the things that my wife talked about so often. She's a yoga instructor, an emergency physician, highly accomplished in her own right, a mindfulness expert, living in the present, breathing techniques, all this stuff that sometime in my life I probably thought was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. But now it was a new and enticing field in which to run. So the first thing I got was the freedom to be a student and the freedom to engage in lifelong learning again.
And that is beautiful. I smiled all the way through that because you framed it up beautifully. I say when you quit giving something your conviction and you start giving it your curiosity, you're giving yourself permission to learn about it again. You're giving yourself permission to be wrong, to restate your beliefs. You don't have to spend so much energy defending something that's not even true anymore. And if people would apply curiosity to politics instead of conviction, we'd have a very different country. But we don't need to go there on this podcast. But I think that's absolutely beautiful. I do want to now. Let's get into what you're doing. Let's get into your company, and I want to get into who you are helping and how you are going about it.
Well, it's new and we're breaking into the fields and we're trying to find out what our areas of maximal effectiveness can be. You're helping me. Other people are helping me in that journey and figuring out what it is. Simply put, though, what we're trying to do is take leaders, but leaders is a very broad term to us, meaning you might be the CEO of a major corporation, or you may be the head of a household, or anything in between, and help them to become better versions of themselves. So many people who are high flying achievers and are really accomplished are robbing Peter to pay Paul, or trading their health for wealth, or are suffering mightily in things that would make them whole in pursuit of some other goal, and or are suffering from early stages of burnout or full on burnout. There are so many people who are highly accomplished in one arena and suffering mightily in another. So what we do is help those people to become more complete versions of themselves through the following pillars. One is self-awareness, discovering what's really driving them, what are their core values, what are things that are most important to them. Connecting mind and body, establishing a mindfulness practice, or finding out really what makes themselves tick and harnessing the power of both their intellect, but their spirit and their physical self as well. Functional fitness, nutrition. You may have heard things like the corporate athlete, making yourself trained well for the sport of business or career success, in part involves other things. Aging and longevity. What's possible now was not possible even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for sure, 20 years ago. Of course, I have selfish interest in that, but I'm 60 years old. My youngest child is 7. I'm highly motivated. I look at it as I just came out of the locker room and I'm ready to start the second half. We're ready to go because that's not fantasy talk anymore. That's the way things may go if I play my cards right and I help others to play theirs too. Then burnout, resilience, sleep, and kind of putting it together, using all the tools mentioned to make oneself more effective, but make oneself truer to themselves, what drives them and what they need over time to really be durable and effective for the long term. So all that's pretty flowery. What we do is work with individuals, leaders, and companies to help their leaders be better, find their shortcomings, and make better versions of themselves.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the Normal 40 podcast. My name is Lon Stroshine, founder of the Normal 40, and I'm super glad you're here. Hey, really quick, by now you know it's my mission to inspire the change in 1,000 lives. And you know that this podcast is just one of the ways I'm doing it. You can also go to my website, normal40.com, and sign up for my free newsletter that comes directly to your inbox. Now, it's not really a newsletter in the sense that you're going to find much news in it. It's just letters from me to you, man, right where you are on your journey. The topics are going to vary from week to week, and I might have a guest article from time to time, but the intent of the Rambler is to meet you right where you're at, and I hope you sign up. You can also sign up for the 14 questions that changed my life. These are questions you can answer for yourself, but these are the questions I wrestled with when I was right where you are. Just a couple other things really quick. A few weeks ago, I launched my book called The Trade, and The Trade within minutes was an Amazon #1 bestseller in multiple categories, and it remains there to this day. I would love it if you'd go buy the book, not because you're going to get something out of me when you read it. It's because the book is going to get something out of you when you read it. Lastly, I've got a closed group off LinkedIn that I call the Insider, and this is where I hang out. I hang out a few times a month in cohorts and in one-on-one calls, and you can come in there and you can join the Insider and you can see for yourself that you are not alone. I would love to see you in there. Look, last thing I'll say is if you're here and this podcast is resonating with you and you can feel something burbling up, I want you to know that you are ready. You are here not because an algorithm. You are here because you are ready. And I want to help you see you through to the other side. Everyone, thanks for being here. Check out the other episodes, and I'm going to see you a little further down the road. What do you see? And I know you're new into this, man. And well, one, I think you're just a fantastic dude and you're fun to talk to. But two, I love this mission. It steps right on the top of Normal 40. And I mean that in the best possible way. We're trying to solve the same problem. I'm just doing it as a dude from a farm in South Dakota. You've got a medical degree, and you're a little bit more qualified than me.
No,
but what we're trying to do is we're trying to inspire people to do things that feel uncomfortable in the short term, to live a life that's more fulfilling in the long term. And making that trade will be the hardest thing that you do to this point in your life. And we talked about this off the bat, whether it makes it on the podcast or not, I don't know, about how that trade, when it's on you, when you make the decision to leave on your terms, if you get that wrong, you feel a burden. You feel it was irresponsible. And that's a tough thing to navigate alone. And most of the people who are listening to this are listening to it because they don't know who else to talk to. So they're going to listen to us talk about it. And that's fantastic. That's why I do this podcast, so that we can connect with those people. But I'm wondering, so now you can imagine the guy or gal who's listening right now, who's somewhere in their 40s, who've checked all the boxes, who's achieved more than they thought possible just 4 or 5 years ago. Now they're making more than they thought possible. And they are the provider for their home in some sense. Maybe they're the only provider, but a substantial provider. They enable a lifestyle that they've become used to. And yet they show up to work knowing that their best days are upon them, but it's not going to be done there. And they've got to wrestle with this. They've got to either tolerate another day, week, month, year, or decade doing what they're doing until finally they can retire in whatever their definition is, or they got to take an action. What do you see through your lens and the people you talk to and the people you're trying to help? What do you think holds them back from making that trade? I'll stop there. What do you think is happening in their world?
One of my closest friends in the world, Chris Raymond, has a great quote that he talks about, there may be a lot of steps to take, but you have to take the first step today. And honestly, Lon, I don't think I've met anybody who is better at helping people take the first step than yourself. That's, I think, what is holding a lot of people back is they kind of know that it almost like you feel that tension in your foot or your center of gravity is leaning forward. You're about to lean forward. And can you lift up that foot? Can you take that first step or not? They want to go. They want to be truer to themselves. Well, I've got this long coaching thing and pillars and all that sort of thing, and I can help you through a lot of steps. And I feel like we've been pretty effective with some of our clients that way. But they have to take that first step. They have to identify it, and then they have to take that first step. And I really think that's where you come in. That's what you do in so many ways. And I know it because I went through it. I think a number of people might hear my story now and go, dude, you worked 33 years and you're talking about some big trade. Well, way to go, man. You were already done. You were practically retired. That's not a great trade. I'm 42. I can't relate. Well, that's not the way I feel. I feel like I had a long time to go. I got all kinds of stuff I want to do, but I had to make this trade now from a position of strength, but also, frankly, a position of trepidation. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, what am I going to do for money? If I go to the ER and work a shift, at the end of the month, they're going to pay me. If I don't go to the ER, okay, you can do the math. I got to figure out what we're doing here. And if I'm going to make this trade, and my wife's got her own career and her own things to do. I know Keith and others have talked about the liberation that comes from having a clear-eyed woman that, and helps you to enable your own dreams or vice versa. And not everybody has that kind of opportunity, but you still have to do it yourself. So I think what holds a lot of people back is all the things I've heard you articulate in so many settings about the comfort that you get over a certain thing. You can find yourself really interested in your golf club or your car or your paycheck or your titles. It was an interesting thing. It's only been a couple of months, but it was an interesting thing the other day when in some social setting or somebody said, what, actually I was in the barbershop, a true story. And the guy said, and my stylist barber, who's a total ace and dear friend, has been cutting my hair for 33 years since my first day of internship. Parker just retired from emergency medicine. I said, well, it's not really a retirement. It's more of a career change. And the next customer said, oh, what did you retire from? And for the very first time, I used the past tense. I was an emergency physician. And I'd never said it out loud before, but I thought, yeah, I was. I'm not on the schedule right now. I could go back. Sure, I've still got a license. I'm board certified. I've got insurance even. I could go back any moment, but I'm not sure I'm planning on it. And in fact, I'm really not. And I was an emergency physician. Well, that means you got to figure out who you are then. What's in the present tense? And is that present tense forward looking? Is that present tense lifelong learner? Is that present tense still a servant? It's finding new identity. It's then getting the second foot to follow the first one. It's all that cascade that turns into an actual walk that I think hold people back. But I applaud you greatly for helping me and so many others decide, all right, we're going to take this first step. And I applaud so many others and hopefully the work I do has helped people make all the ensuing steps.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those kind words. You know this because you're getting there if you're not there already. It's a weird and fantastic realization that I have a knack for being able to articulate things. I don't know that I can articulate how good it feels to know what it sounds like when you get to sound like you. How freeing it is to say what you feel because that's just what you feel without worry for retribution of who it may or may not offend. The people who show up in Normal 40, they don't have to be here. They don't. They don't have to like what I say. They don't. And I'm okay with that. I'm astonishingly okay with that. And the realization, this place when you get to it, it's what I call it. And I didn't even realize I was looking for it. I didn't even realize I was looking for it, Parker, when I left. I used to think I was looking for freedom. I used to think I was looking for control. I know I wanted to take a bet on myself. You know what I was looking for? I was looking for what it felt like to be purely me, using the gifts that I had given, the skills that I had built, and show up to help people. That's it. And I found it. And it wasn't easy, it wasn't obvious, and it wasn't free. And it won't be for you, and it hasn't been for you. We talked about it. It is a journey. But I've got two questions left. And the first one is, what advice do you have for that person? What advice either do you have of you 3 years ago, or for somebody who's right there, the person we're talking about, the person who is dangling onto every word we're saying? They're sitting in their driveway waiting for this freaking podcast to get done, but they want to know, what do I do? What can I do here? What advice do you have for that person who's like, I need to know how to take that first step? What should I do, man?
The first thing I would say is to engage in dialogue, but that dialogue may be in at least two different places. And I'll actually say three. One is you need to know, who you can trust. Almost everybody else has some other critical players in their life, often a spouse, maybe a partner, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your mentor, but who's in your immediate tribe, and have that dialogue with the people that you trust if you can. Hey, I feel some of these things inside. I feel like maybe it's time for me to consider a different path. Let's have a conversation. Now, ultimately, it's going to be up to your second voice, not that grouping, but that grouping's input, it will be vital. The second grouping is be willing to have that dialogue with yourself. Instead of quieting those voices that may keep you awake or cause you to stay in bed, or maybe haunt you in the elevator or in the parking lot when you pull up to your job. We used to talk about that a lot in the ER, is that if you have dread syndrome, that's what we would call it. If you have dread syndrome, when you pull up to the ER, to the little parking lot outside, you need to listen to that. Well, it's hard in there, and a lot of people have some version of dread syndrome for their whole career, even if they love the job. But if you really have dread syndrome about what you're doing and you don't want to do it, and you need to have that dialogue with yourself, and you need to listen. May not make a trade. Maybe you need different coping skills, different framing, different core values. Maybe you don't need to make a trade, but maybe you do, but you won't know if you don't have that dialogue. And the third thing I would say is, at times, talk to professionals, listen to professionals, somebody like yourself, somebody who specializes in this. There are lots of coaches, executives, maybe in your given industry, who have changed their path or have blazed this trail. Very few things happen for the very first time, and there are experts out there that can shepherd you. But if you only listen to one of those three voices, I'm not sure that's great decision making. You got to involve the people in your tribe. You got to listen to yourself. And sometimes you have to listen to those who have gone before you and can give you expert mentoring over the process.
Beautiful advice, man. Absolutely beautiful advice. So my last question, Parker, is it's about your dad. And I'd love to know, you made the comment that you want to live the next 33 years doing something with him. What do you hope that is?
My dad used to talk about, I'll do that when I retire, or I'll travel to Europe again. Oh, I don't really need to go to Japan. No, I've already been to Japan. And I was, he fought in Korea and he's like, I don't really need to. But I think a lot of that was more, I don't have time for that right now, and I'm going to get to that someday. So I think one of the things I would like to do is think about some of the things on his somedays list. He would have liked to have seen more of my sister's lives and growing up. He would like to have seen more of mine and revel in his grandchildren or their successes. I think showing up for family events, showing up for things even in far-flung locations or under difficult circumstances is something he would have done and I would aspire to do. I hope to travel widely. I've had enormous fortunes even as I lived some life of privilege at different times. I've also lived literally tip cup to tip cup as a busker before, where I was down to no money and playing tunes in a subway or on a bridge in Prague. And, I probably wouldn't really have gone to the poorhouse. I could have called somebody and maybe they would have helped me out, but it felt like it. And it's an important feeling to have. But I'd like to travel widely again as a student of humanity, not as a entitled tourist. You learn so much more as a backpacker, as a youth hostel person, I'm going through the back door with a student discount to this museum. I should probably really pay attention, because otherwise I couldn't afford to go in here. You're a different kind of learner under those circumstances than if you come off your long ship and they just shepherd you in there through a VIP entrance. And I would like to stay true to the things he taught me, which I think is what he would have done. He would have found a way to continue to be a servant if he had lived a lot longer. And if I don't continue to earn the fortunes of this life by service, by dedication to other people, dedication to my family, then I won't. I won't earn it anymore. And I would do that on his behalf and by his example-based leadership.
You told a story off the bat about a 1974 Beetle that changed the trajectory of your life. An accident, a rolled over 1974 Beetle and a injured passenger. And in that moment, you talked about how you were able to bring calm to somebody who's potentially fearful for their life, fearful for the lives of their friends, and fearful of their parents. And Parker, I just can't help but think that as I listen to you talk, as I watch you reflect before you answer, and then I listen to the depth of how you reply, you've got a gift for bringing calm to people who need it at times when that's all they want. They want a moment to themselves. They want a moment to feel safe. They want to know someone understands. And you got a gift there, man. And I love the path you're on. I love the mission that you and Laura are taking up. And I hope like crazy you and I find a way to keep intersecting, because I think it's absolutely fantastic.
It's extremely kind and humbling to hear. I thank you very much. I certainly wouldn't say that it's always calm on the inside. Uh, it, if you, it's always calm on the inside if you don't care. It's always calm on the inside if you're not really paying attention, even if you exude calm to the outside. So there can be, it's not the tempest, but there could be turmoil inside, even if one is projecting calm and helping others to achieve that too. And I hope to continue to do that, and thorough discussions and evocative questioning and things that you're so capable of doing are some of the things that help people to get there.
Well, my friend, that's what makes it a passion, is the conflict that you feel inside to muster the courage to do it. Only passion does that. And you're clearly passionate about service in this way, and you got a gift. And I can't wait to see where it takes you.
You're very kind. I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, dude, it was great to have you on the podcast. It was great to reconnect. And look, we're going to do this again. And for that matter, whenever you want. And I'll reach out to you again real soon to have another Ramble Boss.
All right. I certainly would, shameless plug department, welcome any of your listeners or others to our podcast as well, Lasting Impact Wellness, or through our organization, because I think there's so much complementary work to be done. I hope to be part of it. Visit us at Dr. Hayes on Instagram or through any other venue. I look forward to seeing how many first steps you help people take, because there are a lot of them to be made and a lot of great paths that'll be followed only because of your instigation and enablement.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will put all the links to your business in the show notes. And by the way, Hayes is Hays. Don't put an E in there, or you're going to get a different Dr. Hayes.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
All right, Doctor. Great having you here. Thanks for being on the podcast. And I look forward to doing this again real soon.
You're the man. My honor to be here. Thank you, Lon.
Hey, everyone. One more time, thank you to my friend Parker Hayes. Dude, I just love your story. I love your mission. I love these nuggets that you dropped on us, bringing the calm to people in need, be an active listener, and to become a student again. I mean, that's magic, man. And I know for you, it's something you're living and it seems natural. But when you're still wondering what it's like to separate, those words are magic. And as I say all the time, if you can accept how you feel, you can permit yourself to make a change. Doesn't mean you will, you just permit yourself to make that an option, and you act on something, no matter how big or small. The action can be just talking to someone. The action can be a free ramble with me. The action can be email Parker Hayes and have a conversation. When you can just do those things, you're starting a new tomorrow. Everyone, thanks for being here. Parker, thanks for being you. And if there's ever anything I can do for anybody who can hear my voice right now, you know where to find me, normal40.com. My name's Lon, and on behalf of Normal 40, the podcast, I'm going to see all of you on the next page. Let's be up to something.